Jim Harbaugh is dealing with a 3-game suspension that is self-imposed from what essentially was they were trying to get out in front of with the NCAA. They were working out a 4-game suspension. They were trying to get done for the season. The powers that be, the infractions committee, I believe is what it's called, they refused that. So Michigan says, okay, you know what? You're going to try and get us next year and try and punish us. We're going to just punish ourselves right now. 3-game suspension for Jim Harbaugh, no problem. So we're going hard on ourselves right now so you can go easy on us this time next year when we get things rolling again. Sound good? To give you some backstory here, these issues or this suspension is coming because of the recruiting violations, the alleged recruiting violations rather, that happened during a COVID-19 dead period with impermissible contact with recruits. And the failure to cooperate with that investigation, more or less, is essentially why this whole deal has come to what it is. So we'll talk more about that in a second. If you can make sure you're subscribed. Speaking to the people that are watching the clipped version of this video, we have a live show Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern. Thank you so much for locking in and being subscribed and joining us then. Okay, this whole thing is very weird. This whole thing is a very awkward situation, if you ask me, when you talk about where Michigan is right now. Because the 3 games that Michigan is going to play, like in terms of what it means for them, just like say your prayers for East Carolina, UNLV, and Bowling Green. Because those are the 3 teams that are going to have to feel the wrath of what this Michigan team is going to bring because of a suspended Jim Harbaugh. Because this team, man, I mean, you listen to what they talk about in press conferences, like, they understand what it is. They feel like it's them versus the world. They feel like it's them versus the powers that be, and they're going to bring some fire, all right? They're going to bring a little bit of extra juice when it comes to playing these teams. So that'll be what it is. The 2024 ruling, though, because you would imagine there will be another suspension probably coming at the beginning of 2024. I don't know that to be true, but that's kind of how it feels. You would imagine you won't have Jim Harbaugh. Let's say the suspension is more than 1 game. I don't think that's a stretch. Week 2, September 7th, they welcome the Texas Longhorns to town. So it felt like they were trying to get out in front of maybe being able to have him for that game, because that's going to be a game that is, at the very least, a little bit more difficult than a game against Bowling Green. No shade to Bowling Green. But what it means for this year, like, you could call me up right now to be the head coach for those 3 games. I promise you we'd go 3-0. And not because I'm a great coach, just because Michigan is going to do whatever they want to those teams. That's kind of the deal. But here's my issue with this whole thing. Michigan is doing a reasonable thing, trying to get out in front of the powers that be in this suspension and trying to sort of put some sort of good faith forward, saying, hey, we understand rules were broken or rules were allegedly broken. We're handling it internally. Please take it easy on us next year. So they're doing a reasonable thing, and they're expecting a reasonable response from the NCAA. They're expecting a reasonable response from the same system, same structure that is keeping Tez Walker and Darrell Jackson from playing football this coming season. Darrell Jackson, of course, transferred to Florida State to be closer to his mother, who is ill. And the NCAA is like, nope, sorry. Not a good enough excuse. Tez Walker didn't even play 1 season of college football because of COVID. So you would imagine his clock wouldn't have started, and they're like, nope, sorry, clock started, doesn't count. You can't transfer again. Like, you see what I'm saying here? The expectation is that there's going to be a reasonable response to a reasonable action when this body as a whole has never been reasonable. They've never done, and this is kind of harsh but true, they've never done like the common sense thing here. And so I don't love the fact that Michigan is putting their faith into this system and saying, okay, we're going to be reasonable. We're hoping you respond accordingly. Go in peace. Like, I don't think that's how this whole thing is going to go. I think this is actually going to probably come back and hurt Michigan a little bit more than they're hoping it will. I don't think this is going to accomplish what they want it to accomplish. I think the NCAA wants to see this hurt Michigan. And I don't say in the sense they want to cut them down from the legs and take out the Michigan football team. I don't mean it like that. What I mean is I think they want to make sure that they feel the consequences of this issue. And they refused a 4-game suspension. Like I said at the top of this thing, they already said 4 games wasn't enough. So I don't think that they're going to come back and say, okay, 3 games next year, you're good to go. Like, maybe they do, maybe they don't. I talked to somebody that thinks NCAA wants 6 games. It's not a report, it's not official, but there's a feeling that the NCAA is really trying to make it a point here against Michigan. And the reason why I don't think that any of this is going to turn out how I think common sense would suggest it should is because this whole situation to begin with isn't a common sense issue. Those recruiting violations we talked about, the COVID-19 stuff, as a whole, COVID-19 and that whole issue was like an unprecedented time in history. So there's a lot of gray area to deal with there. The other part is the impermissible like recruiting violations was buying burgers for recruits. I understand that's not the only thing that happened in the situation. I understand there was like a failure to cooperate and all that. But like at the end of the day, we're talking about cheeseburgers. We want to suspend a head coach for like a third of the season over some cheeseburgers? Or have we lost our minds? Is that really a punishment that fits the crime here? I don't think so. So nothing throughout this whole thing has been reasonable. I worry for Michigan doing a reasonable thing and not getting a reasonable response back. Just kind of the reality of what I think this whole thing looks like right now. So unfortunate, hate to see it. Not ideal for anybody involved, but Jim Harbaugh has a self-imposed suspension for 3 games. Fully expect Michigan to go 3-0. We'll revisit this time next year and see where things stand for Jim Harbaugh and company. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.